Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tuesdays with Trailblazers, brought to you by AdTech Edge, the video podcast where we bring you the latest trends and insights in advertising and technology. I'm your host, Sadesh, and today we have with us Mike Hoffman, CEO Adler. Mike has been working in the online marketing industry since 2006 and has a passion for creating innovative and accessible solutions that help marketers maximize their reach, results, and revenue. So, without further ado, let's welcome Mike. Hey, Mike, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Sid. Thanks for having me on.
Likewise, Mike, we're excited to have you out here. So, starting from the beginning, Mike, I'm pretty sure our audience is keenly interested in knowing, your career trajectory. So, you were a part of Media Math in its early days, right? So, what lessons from that experience shaped your vision for founding Adler?
Yeah. Yeah. So when I think back to the early days at Media Math, and this was back in 2010, it was all brand new. Media Math had built the first UI for programmatic media buying. And our job was to sell the vision and sell success and results
Mhm.
through this newer technology. So there was a lot of education required. There was a lot of selling of visions required and kind of dancing that line between what we knew was possible today, what we knew was
Mhm.
coming tomorrow. And, what I learned from that experience was you could have like the best tools in the world, you could have the most powerful algorithms in the world, but if the client's not ready for it and if they don't have buy-in within that organization, or maybe if they have the platform but it's too complex for them to use, maybe it's too new or it's too cumbersome or they don't have the right resources, adoption is going to stall and you're going to have friction in client onboarding, and ultimately that's going to impact your business. So I learned a lot about growing, and I learned a lot about selling into large organizations and camaraderie, being at the front lines uh, of a difficult, it was a battle between different companies trying to create the space and gain market share
Mhm.
in a rapidly growing ecosystem. What I really took away from that was it still needs to be simple, and if it's not simple, it's not going to be accessible, and innovation doesn't really count
Mhm.
unless it's available to the masses and unless it's accessible.
Great to know that. I mean, every startup faces critical pivots, right? So, what was AdLib's defining pivot and how did it change the trajectory of the company?
Yeah. So we started on this principle of easier, and that it was too complicated. And let's make buying media through a DSP just easier to access, easier to use. And while that got us some traction, it also kept us stuck in this comparison game. We were constantly being compared to, okay, well, how are you different? How are you different than this other easy way of doing this? Which there were some other examples there, kind of tier two, tier three version versus the enterprise. But it was a very red ocean, if you will. And we made it. Like we built a small company out of that concept of making programmatic easier to access, easier to use in a self-service fashion. But the big pivot really came into 2020. Media Math, the company that we were built on, the infrastructure that we were making easier to access, easier to use, their company went bankrupt basically overnight. And that meant that our platform and all of the media and all of the campaigns that our platform was running on behalf of our clients stopped. So we had to pivot, really evolve and grow instantly. We didn't have this long kind of runway to think about what to do and how the business was going to grow. It was almost forced on us in that we were forced to identify other platforms, other infrastructure, other media buying tools that we could use to now get our clients' campaigns live because Media Math wasn't an option. So it was basically a long weekend over the 4th of July weekend. And when we stood up, finally had a chance to catch our breath, what we saw was we had now built a platform that consolidated all of the programmatic pipes across all the different DSPs. It made workflows easier, but it also gave more leverage to the buyer and made results better because you were able to have a singular view of how campaigns were running. You were able to have optionality of running campaigns into different platforms because you weren't as locked into one. So it was this really terrible point in time, as far as difficult on the business, difficult on the team, and strenuous mental health and things like that. But it changed everything for us, and we were no longer just another tool. We were now a very unique partner that can help brands and agencies simplify, consolidate, and scale. And that's now where the trajectory has really accelerated.
Amazing. I mean, I understand how difficult pivoting could be, right? I mean, I've had real time experience over it. I understand those sleepless nights, when coffee turns into water and consuming gazillions of coffee out there. But I think it was all worth it at the end of the day, right? Those sleepless nights, those endless coffees. I'm pretty sure they were all worth it.
Yeah, it's but without those lessons and without failures, and you can't grow. So it was ultimately the best thing that happened to our company, and we've seen exponential growth since that incredibly terrible moment that I thought was going to shut us down.
Hmm.
It really instead had the complete opposite effect, and it was the accelerant that we needed to grow exponentially.
Absolutely. And commendable effort out to your entire team, to be honest, hosted by you as well. Coming back to traditional DSPs,
Yeah.
DSPs have been the backbone of programmatic, right? So, how do you see the DSP category evolving in today's market?
Yeah. So DSPs, have really been the backbone of programmatic for years. It was the gateway to media buying. Over time, the market's become somewhat commoditized, and most DSPs do 80% of the same thing. There may
Hmm.
be uh, unique supply, there may be unique data, there may be some unique workflow tool or channel, but really what we see now as the opportunity is in orchestration. It's not which DSP you're using or you've used, it's about how you're using them, how you're connecting to them, how you're optimizing your campaigns across the different platforms in real time and using the data to inform really which platform has the right to run that spend based
Hmm.
on objective, third party view from whatever measurement platform you're using, and closing that loop now in real time is the layer that AdLib is building. So how do I take that signal? How do I close the loop across all the different platforms using whatever measurement tool maybe for D2C, that's Triple Whale or Northbeam. For mobile app marketers, that may be AppsFlyer or Adjust. But historically, what a marketer would have to do is they would have humans, traders, quants going in and manually pulling all these levers. And there's a future where, now that everything is consolidated, there's opportunity to extract way more performance out of the system by having always on optimization that has this optionality as far as where the campaign can run based on the most efficient supply path all the way through the demand side platform. So it's not just about SPO and supply path optimization. It's also should be inclusive of the rest of that supply chain, which is the demand side.
Informative. Now, let's talk about the other aspect, the other side, or as we say, the client side. What are the key benefits brands and agencies gain by consolidating DSP access under a single platform?
Yeah. So we touched upon this a little bit. I think if you talk to any media buyer, they'll tell you that the hardest part isn't necessarily the access, it's the fragmentation. You're logging into multiple platforms, you're pulling all these reports from different systems, you're testing out different strategies manually, and you don't have really a singular view of the user. So our bet is that by consolidating DSP access under a single platform, brands and agencies are going to have about at least three big wins. One in the efficiency and having a singular workflow and not 10. So literally just saving time, not going through different tabs in my platform. Thing two is leverage. If you have a single DSP platform and you've committed large annual budgets and spend to those platforms, you no longer have as much leverage as you can or you should because you're locked into that platform for the next 12 months or 24 months. So by consolidating access, you can now allocate in real time by specific campaigns to the appropriate platform and have that leverage now tilted more in your favor as the buyer and as to where and how your media dollars are most efficiently used. Thing three is data clarity. By having this single source of truth that's now closing the loop between those
Mhm.
measurement platforms and pulling in conversions, pulling in ROAS from those third parties, it's freeing up the team to focus on the strategy and not all this admin and guesswork and pivot tables into where they're really adding value for their customers. And we believe that within the next 12 months, we're going to see X outcomes from these improvements that we're seeing with consolidation, and then
Mhm.
also what's coming with AI and how much more efficient AI allows the user to become when they're not wasting time on admin and on tedium.
Absolutely. Now, we just spoke about AI, right? And that's a big topic everyone is talking about. So, where does AI make the biggest impact in programmatic right now? Optimization, decisioning, or creative?
Yeah, so huge role in optimization, right? The concept of machine learning algorithms for programmatic media buying is the whole premise that programmatic ad buying was built on top of. It was, how do I milliseconds determine the real-time value and the market value of this impression to submit a bid that has the highest likelihood of driving the business objective, whether that's a return on ad spend of 3 to 1. I want this user to become a high lifetime value user. I just want to reach users. So that's already been around. I think the next big breakthrough is really in the media planning and the decisioning side of things across channels and helping users figure out where the next incremental dollar is coming from. Does that go across unique channels? Does that go across unique audiences? And that's where AI to me starts to feel more like a growth partner and not just an algorithm and not just an automation tool. So, suggesting new strategies, suggesting new creative messaging, suggesting new suppression, uh, new ways to suppress users, and being this co-pilot and this always on data scientist that never gets tired of me telling it, think harder, think faster, think more creatively. And I don't have to have this funding and these incredibly expensive the expenses that comes along with resources that are able to think in that way, right? Not necessarily replacing McKinsey, but that type of thinking is now accessible to
Mhm.
every independent agency. They could put together really thoughtful media plans. They could put together really thoughtful analysis that doesn't take weeks. It can pull in data from all the different platforms, uncover
Mhm.
these incredible anomalies that maybe a human never would have been able to. And I think the next frontier is really in creative. Image generation is a thing. If you look at how much better it's gotten over the last 6 months as far as the ability to handle text, there is a huge unlock for brands in being able to create personalization at scale. And really, it doesn't need to be overly personalized and kind of know too much about the consumer and feel like it's a privacy concern. But there's a real challenge in trying out different messaging in
Mhm.
different demographics, in different parts of the funnel, in different seasons, with the ability now to generate hundreds of ad units in real time and test those out with the closing the loop of the data. I think it's really going to change the way that brands are able to engage with consumers.
How is AdLib using AI to simplify complexity while still giving buyers transparency and control?
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the guiding principles is just that. AI should be reducing complexity and not adding to it. So we've done a ton of automation in terms of how do we just hand off all the repetitive tasks that humans have been doing, whether that be ad operations or analysis or bid adjustments. How do we automate a lot of that?
Mhm.
Because it just takes a lot of time. But then also, how do we uncover more information? Because we have an always on system that's looking at data 24/7 on the weekends, on holidays to surface more of the why behind how the system is making decisions, why campaigns are performing, and some of the how as far as what should you be looking at next. So a lot of that guesswork is being removed, and that means speed, that means scale, and that means better results for our clients who, are used kind of becoming a little bit more sophisticated, and clients are understanding more about how they're able to incorporate AI into their day to day, how it's making them better at grocery shopping, how it's making just their trips more efficient and saving them money. So they kind of get it already in their day to day, and they're excited about the speed, they're excited about the scale that's going to be possible and what it's going to free them up from. Because we're not thinking of it as this scary black box that's going to do everything for them. It's a co-pilot that's helping you do more.
And final question. And I actually love asking founders this one. As a founder, CEO, how do you balance steering the big picture vision with staying close to the evolving needs for your clients?
It's a real challenge, especially when you're dealing with growth, right? So the team has gone from 3 people to 21 people over the past 24 months. I
Mhm.
used to be I wore a lot. I still wear a lot of hats, but I used to wear every hat. And I used to work
Mhm.
in the business a lot more than I have been of late and working on the business. So really, my focus now is as founder and CEO is spending a lot of time thinking about the big picture, where the industry is headed, how AI is reshaping advertising. What's the health of the company? We're a bootstrapped organization, so making sure that we have cash in the bank and that we're able to thrive and be self-reliant forever and kind of own our destiny. At the same time, I need to make it a point to stay close to our clients. So I'm on calls. I'm listening to their pain points. I'm still getting involved. I'm trying not to get in the way because now that the
Mhm.
team is, fully capable and knows more than I do, and I know just enough to be dangerous. I'm trusting the team, but I'm involved and I'm there and I'm trying to listen to what's good and trying to listen to what's also more importantly what's bad. What are the pain points? What are the frustrations? Because what's good is good. Like what good is going well. I don't need to hear too much of that right now. I'm really focusing on where is there opportunity for us to do better because that feedback is absolute gold and it shapes our roadmap and it shapes the opportunity for us to punch our weight, right? Because we're a really small organization. So we're lucky to be nimble enough and small enough of an organization to really do something about that feedback and release a feature in a week or 2 weeks based on a specific client need. But
Mhm.
it's a balance. You can't build every single feature that a client asks for. But if you're staying in touch with the future and you know the big picture and you have a conviction of where things are going, you can then figure out how to fold the two together. How do you hold that vision, but also let clients steer the execution? Because ultimately, that's how we make sure that we're building what
Mhm.
clients matters to clients.
Agree with you. I mean, steps you've taken, difficult, yes, but needed also. What's one of those marketing or advertising beliefs you've changed your mind about in the last 3 years?
Yeah, so I would say the rise of walled gardens and retail media networks. If I think back to a couple of years ago, it seemed a little counterintuitive to me as far as more fragmentation is, more complexity for buyers. And I still do think that those risks are real because you're going back to old days of insertion or not insertion orders, but more manual steps and not only on buying, but consolidation and less visibility into what's working as far as the full funnel. But I've also come to realize the upside, right? These platforms have incredibly valuable data signals and they know what works best for their specific audiences. So when you can unify some of that access under one roof, it's a growth engine for brands. And I think my shift is probably less about resisting the trend and more about rethinking how to integrate it into AdLib. Uh, because it's really creates another opportunity for us in that we think there are ways to consolidate retail media and these other walled gardens that are cropping up into the same workflow as the traditional DSPs and media buying platforms that we've started with. And it turns another silo into an advantage for our clients who don't have to initiate new relationships for all these other kind of platforms. It's all available, whether that's huge payment processor or retail media network or pharmacy. Every kind of retailer and some owner of first party data under the sun is creating their own media network.
Okay. And because you spoke about, wall gardens, do you think these wall gardens like Google or Meta are stifling innovation, or are they pushing the industry to be more sharper?
Google and Meta, they'll continue to push the frontier of what's possible and what can be accomplished with technology and media and automation. And they've got enough leverage where they can kind of push newer features and push new ways and methods on the market maybe earlier than the market is quite ready for. We see that with Facebook removing controls and targeting options and Google and their PMax product and really stripping away some of the complexity and asking the simple question to the marketer, what are you trying to achieve? What is your marketing objective? Tell us that, and then we will let our platform drive that result for you. And there's, a future where marketers will be willing to give up way more control. And I think it will look much more like that version of media buying than it does today, which is 1,000 knobs in a million different places and too much complexity. So, it's good in that it pushes the industry forward and it allows for some really incredible advancements to be, leveraged by businesses and helps businesses grow their businesses to grow other businesses, and there's an incredible amount of value in that. So super grateful for them because we see a future where there's more automation, and like we mentioned earlier, more opportunity to think strategically versus being heads down just on keyboards tweaking bids and making these small changes that really at the end of the day, in the not so distant future, AI or robots, I think we could all be confident are going to have a leg up on the average human or maybe the average trader.
Perfect, Mike. Really enjoyed hosting you in our podcast Tuesdays with Trailblazers. And thank you all for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review. Until next time, stay tuned with Attic Edge for more insights. Signing off, your host, Sadesh.